Goodness knows all sorts of things. So I'm going to deal with my dad, who y'all know had a couple of strokes over the summer and is not totally, why are you not showing up? Come on, do your thing. He's not totally capable of doing everything for himself anymore. And so he had just bought a house, and now we put the house up for sale and somebody agreed to buy it. So we have to go close on the house. And I have this thing called, have you ever heard of power of attorney? Do you know what that is? So it's interesting. So if you are if you're an adult and come on, do you think, hey, if you're an adult and you want another adult to have the ability to make like legal decisions for you, you can give that person what's called power of attorney. It's kind of cool because what it means is like, I can go sell my dad's house for him. I can do all the signing and all that kind of stuff, which is really handy because if we're being totally honest, like he can't physically sign his name right now very well because his hands don't work very well anymore. So that'll be convenient. Plus we aren't quite totally sure how well his decision-making is. So do you know what a stroke is? Here's a quick biology lesson.
Yes.
What's a stroke, Darcy?
I think it's something that happens when something happens to your heart and then your brain reacts.
It's your brain.
I went to summer camp and medical was one of my things that I worked on. So a stroke is when you have a blood clot that travels up to your brain.
So it can be one of two things. So let me hand these back. So
You either completely lose or
Claire,
lose enough blood flow.
awesome. Make sure you put your name on the other side so I don't see it when I'm judging pictures. So yeah, so there's a couple kinds of strokes. You can either have a blood vessel in your brain that breaks open and then bleeds, which means that part of your brain isn't getting oxygen and that therefore it's not functioning well. Or you can have, like Claire said, a blood clot that causes part of your that blocks blood flow in part of your brain and causes the same kind of problem. So weirdly enough, my dad has had both in the last couple months. So he had the bleeding kind in May, and then in July he had the embolic kind, which is the other sort. So anyway, we sent him to have a bunch of tests done, and we're going to get the results of those tests tomorrow morning. And I don't think he's going to be happy with them because I suspect they're going to tell him he probably shouldn't live by himself and maybe shouldn't drive. And he's going to be very upset. So not looking forward to that, but hey. All right, so we are going to talk about population, ecosystems, ecology. So if you've got your binders open, or even if you don't, if you're just following along, that's fine too. So let's have a look though at last week's homework. If you did last week's homework already, so we talked about what producers take in. What do producers take in? Your choices were, I think you had choices. What'd you say, Drew?
Producers take in oxygen and let out carbon.
Yep, they take in carbon.
Oh, so sorry.
Yeah, other way around. Take in carbon dioxide, very good. And then they do release oxygen, and then consumers take in oxygen. Whoops, that's supposed to say oxygen. I'm gonna fix that right now. Look at that. That's me doing a copy paste, and so that I would get the same animation, but then not changing. Wow. There we go. Now that's right. That's better. So yeah, that's where we are. And then, so what are you, a producer or consumer? Do you remember? You're consumers, that's right. So we're gonna match them up. So this is probably what your homework looked like if you did online. So your herbivores are gonna eat only plants, your carnivores are eating only meat, your omnivores are eating both, obviously, and then your scavengers are eating dead stuff.
Is scavenger really
Is it a standalone category?
Yeah, because wouldn't a
No.
scavenger still be considered a carnivore?
They can be any of the above. So scavengers are interesting.
Because who eats a live animal?
Sometimes, very good. So, well, a lot of animals eat live animals. Well, a lot of carnivores will eat live animals. I mean, well, they kill it and then they eat it, and then a lot of them will just eat live animals. Think about like frogs; they just stuff a fly.
I eat chicken.
Well, so the idea behind a scavenger is that it eats a dead organism that it finds rather than it kills. Now, today, we typically find our chicken in the grocery store. That doesn't really make us a scavenger because our species killed it. Like, we may not have been the one to actually, whack the chicken's head off or whatever it is they do these days, but right. but we were the ones that took care of the chicken, right?
Oh.
Yeah, there you go. So, and scavengers, Drew, that's a really good point. So hang on. Scavengers fall into a couple of weird categories. They're sorted decomposers because they are helping break down dead organic matter, right? They're eating it. They're sort of omnivores, depending on the scavenger. They're sort of carnivores and they can sort of be herbivores. It kind of depends. And then they're also a subcategory of scavengers, remember, called detrivores, and they eat the little chunks of things. That's like flies and ants and things like that, as opposed to vultures, right? And then you got, bacteria too, and cockroaches. Ugh. I've seen cockroaches eat some gross things. We have those cockroaches here, those palmetto bugs, the big ones. They aren't the kind that infest. So if you see them in your house, it's not like you have a cockroach problem, but they're gross. They're so nasty. I had never seen them before I moved to Georgia. I guess we have them in Virginia, but I never saw them. And my uncle was an exterminator. And I called him after I moved here because I found one on my living room floor, like running across, those big guys. And I called him. I said, okay, I don't know what this is. This is a massive bug. It looks like a cockroach. It's huge. It's as big as my thumb. And he said, is it golden brown or chocolate brown? And I said, it's like chocolate brown. He said, okay, you don't have a problem. They're just coming in looking for water. Freaked me out. So the most energy is available at the consumer, the top part of your energy pyramid, and that's false, right? Your most energy is going to be at the bottom where you have your grass and all that kind of stuff, all of your producers. And then obviously you're going to have fewer and fewer carnivores and consumers at the top. And then you get to the very top of your food pyramid and you find things like us, or maybe in a savanna, you find a lion or something like that. So what are our 4 forms of precipitation? What?
Rain, hail, snow, and sleet.
Very good. Yep. And some of you had put freezing rain, which I went ahead and counted because freezing rain is a little different than sleet, but you had the idea. And if we do earth science, we'll get down to the picky differences. But for now, we're good. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. It said that the least amount of energy is at the top, where consumers are.
Right.
But aren't we considered at the top? Of
Yep.
the food chain?
We're at the top.
In that scenario, don't we have more energy available to us than so many others because we're smart enough to breed animals and then?
Well, yeah, but you have to look at it. You can't look at it in an agricultural sense like that. You have to look at it in a biological sense, like if we didn't live in houses and we lived out, with everybody else in the wild, right? So yeah, those are our 4 forms of precipitation. Alrighty, so we're going to be talking about biogeography. So what is it? The branch of biology that deals with geographical distribution plants and animals. It's biogeography. So when we talk about those Latin and Greek words and roots that we see a lot, we got bio, right? Which means what? Life. Good. Geo would mean what,
Geography.
Yeah, that's a good one. Geography. You've heard it there. So what's geo, do you think? How about this one? Do you know what graph or graphy is? Earth is geo. And then what's graph or graphy? Does anybody know?
Graphics.
Like when you see graph or graphy like that is part of a word. So what's a biography? Anybody know that one?
Self-published.
Yeah, autobiography would be something you write about yourself, right? A biography is something somebody else wrote about yourself. So this means like to write, it means more like to inscribe or to write down. Whereas if you see gram, it tends to be what you've written. Like you may have an electrocardiogram and they print out your heart patterns. You ever seen that thing? It goes beep, 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 beep. Yeah, right. So a biogeography would literally say life and earth written. So it's kind of like how it's mapped. That's exactly what it means. So continental drift. All right. This is, I love this theory because this is fun to look at. So if you look at the continents today, all right, and you smash them together, they fit like a puzzle, right? They really do fit like puzzle pieces. And this is where this guy, Alfred Wegener, now this dude is he's German or Austrian, I can't remember, but in this case, that W gets pronounced like a V, so it's Wegener. So Alfred Wegener, he proposed this whole hypothesis, and that became the continental drift theory. And this was only 1912, so a little over 100 years ago. Prior to that, people weren't really paying attention. And so this idea that he had 4 main points that he used to support it. So one of them is the continents fit like a puzzle, and they totally do. And another one was the paleoclimate indicators. All right, so this is evidence of things like glaciation. Okay, glaciation, that's a big one. Do you see the root glacier in there though? What's a glacier? Anybody know what a glacier is? Kind of, yeah. What's the difference between a glacier and an iceberg? Do you know? So an iceberg, where would you find an iceberg? Where would you find it?
Antarctica.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Yeah.
North Pole.
Yeah, in the water primarily, like floating in the water. So what about a glacier, Drew?
A glacier is attached to a large piece of land.
Yeah, glacier is like an iceberg, but it's on land instead of in the water. And glaciers are huge. We're talking like if you were to look at a map of the United States, there used to be glaciers that ran from, Vermont all the way down to like where we are. Massive. We're not talking like little blocks of ice. And you can look at what they, yeah, you can see them from space. Absolutely. We still have some glaciers. A lot of them are, towards the poles, like where you might find your icebergs and stuff now. But they drag stuff with them. So you have to think it's a big block of ice, but it's massive. It's huge, tall, like Empire State Building, probably bigger than that tall. And it's slowly sliding. So as they go, not only do they mush the earth underneath of them and shape it, but they also pick up rocks and sticks and all kinds of things, and they drag it. So you can see where they've been. Yeah, you can see where they've been by seeing what they left behind.
Is that where you find like all these frozen animals in the ice?
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes you can. And I think I shared this week before last, but they very recently found a cave lion. Where was it? Was it Russia? Somewhere that has like a tundra area that's been cold for a long time. They found 2 cave lions. Now, cave lions are prehistoric animals, mammals that are way bigger than our current lions. Like if you stood next to a lion today, you'd be looking at a lion, right? Cave lions were like huge, heads like this, massive creatures, right? They found baby cave lions in this cave with like encased in ice and in the back. One of them was somewhat damaged. The other one, she was so perfect. She was so perfect that her fur was only a little ruffled. They can see the pads on her feet. All of her little nails are still intact. I'll have to share the article with you guys again. It's fascinating. It's a very recent find. So these are all things called paleoclimate indicators. Like what did the climate used to be like?
I actually saw a documentary about that.
Did you?
Yeah.
I mean, she's really cool. Her little face is mushed and stuff because she's been squashed in ice for thousands and thousands of years. But it's incredible how much detail has been retained because she was frozen fast.
They're also actually trying to thaw it out.
Yeah, and that's a hard thing to do because then you start getting tissue damage. So you have to be very, very careful with stuff like that. So then we have what we call truncated geological features. So basically what this means is that you get similar rocks and you find them in places like over here in South America and then in Africa. Same kind of rocks containing the same minerals in roughly the same layers. And that tells us that that area was connected. And then lastly, fossil distribution. So this is the biological aspect. So this means, see this dude over here? It says, what is he? Cynognathus, all right? Triassic land reptile, 3 meters long. That's a big lizard-like thing, huge. We're talking like bigger than the couch, actually, way bigger, 3 meters. So probably another half again as big as the couch. Big, right? Oh yeah, bigger than them. If you've seen a Komodo, bigger than a Komodo, way bigger. So we've got fossils of that guy, both in South America and Africa. And then like over here, we've got in Antarctica and in Australia and over here in South America, we have this particular type of fern. So the only way that these things would be in all of these same areas is if the areas were connected and those animals or plants had the run of the land before the land broke. And if you do earth science next year, we'll talk about how land moves. And it's fascinating. And we do a fun lab where we use tomato soup and crackers to like reenact the processes that cause continents to drift apart and together. Really neat stuff. So we get species dispersal, all right? And that is that among both plants and animals, dispersal usually takes time. And wait a minute, did I skip one? Nope, I didn't. Okay, time of reproduction. So dispersal is defined as the movement of individual organisms from their birthplace to other locations for breeding. So organisms are also spread out by passive means, such as wind, water, other creatures. So there are certain animals that absolutely move in order to breed. Monarch butterflies are famous for that. They move every year, specifically to breed. Salmon, do you know what salmon do that's fascinating?
Oh, they go into bigger rivers.
Yeah. Do you know what they do? You nodded like you knew. They what?
Don't they move upstream?
Yeah, they swim upstream, which is fascinating because most fish don't fight a stream. Do you know what they do that's so neat?
They provide food for people.
Well, they do. Yeah. Actually, I have some salmon in the fridge. It was really good. The other night we were eating salmon. But the interesting thing about salmon is, so you think about fish, all right? And you don't think of fish typically as animals that can reason and think and whatever. And they can't. They don't honestly have that type of neurological capacity. Like this dude right here has learned, ooh, he's got some minerals here I need to wipe off, but he's learned that if I tap at the top, it means the food's coming and he will go there. That's like stimulus response. That's about as good as it's going to get for him. I'm not going to be able to teach this guy how to follow a map, right? But salmon, you know, a male and a female salmon will spawn and they'll fertilize eggs and they'll swim off and those eggs will hatch. And the following year, those offspring, those babies will come back to the same place to make their own babies. How do they know where they were? So that's something we don't even fully understand. How do they know where they were laid as eggs?
There's an episode of Futurama that actually explains it.
Isn't it? Yeah, like we have some of it, but we don't know like all the intricate details because it's really involved.
I think it might be because of egg fragments.
It could be, yeah. It could be all kinds of, there's all kinds of things like that that animals do that are really fascinating. Where when you get really thinking about it, it's like, how do they figure that out?
It's so weird because I actually know what you're talking about from
Mhm.
from a
Futurama?
TV show.
All kinds of stuff. So limitations to dispersal.
What?
All right.
Yes, wild crafts.
So we have some limitations to dispersal. Physical barriers is a big one. If you can't get across to move to another area, you're not going to migrate there, whether it's to breed or just to live. Or it could be, anybody ever seen The Land Before Time?
Yeah.
Old movie with dinosaurs in it. They're trying to get to where there's food. Yeah, I know. They're trying to get somewhere where there's food and there are places they can't cross because they can't physically get across. So in this case, this little fox tells the other one, if you really loved me, you'd swim across. Well, maybe they can't. And maybe there are some foxes over here on this side of the river who, maybe this river's really big. Maybe it's not like this little stream. Maybe it's the Mississippi or something massive where the foxes are not going to be swimming across. So this dude over here, he may never find a mate and his genetic information is just going to die out and that's going to be it for him.
Aw,
And sooner or later, there will be no foxes on this side of the river because if they're not breeding, they're not making more foxes, right?
poor guy.
Sad, and you know, story of life.
That just,
Yeah.
that hurt.
That
If
hurts.
you really love me, you would swim.
You would swim across, right? So competition. All right, we have two vultures fighting over
I love you, but I don't want to
over a rack of ribs, which apparently this one, you know, this one here with throwing the punch is winning. I think it's funny that their little wings are balled up like fists, but competition. So if it comes to, we all have resources that we need to live, right? And all of our resources are limited to some degree. There's certain things that are relatively infinite, like wind and air and stuff like that. But water is definitely limited. You know, sometimes it doesn't, especially if your water is in a pond and not in a stream or something, you only have what's there. And if it doesn't rain and there's a drought and that pond dries up, you've lost your water.
I don't understand, but water's always going to exist. You can't destroy matter.
True. It's not that the water's gone from the biosphere. It's that the water's gone from that ecosystem. And then you don't have it.
So it's only limited.
It's
For some
limited
people.
within the ecosystem. So you have to think about what context you're in. So in this sense, we're in the context of individual ecosystems. So in this ecosystem, there is only one rack of zebra rib, and this dude wins. Why does he win? I don't know. Maybe he's stronger. Maybe he's younger. Maybe he's more agile. Maybe he got there faster than this dude. Maybe this dude, say for example, this vulture had one bum wing and he didn't fly real well. Like he had like a Nemo wing. All right. And he couldn't get there in time. This guy's going to eat everything before he gets there. This guy's going to die out. And if he dies because he starves to death, he doesn't produce babies and his genetic line dies out. And that's how we end up with certain changes we see within a population. So now then you got climate. All right. Obviously climate's going to limit things like dispersal. We have these two bears, one of them soaking wet. One of them is sweating to death. And doesn't look like either of them are in the optimal
One
climate.
looks very annoyed. He's like,
Yeah, this one looks like he can't take another breath because he's just suffocating. And this one's like, I'm really tired of the rain. So if you live in a climate that isn't conducive to your functioning, you're not going to do very well. You're not going to thrive. So if there's a shift in climate or a change in your climate, then you're going to have trouble. And like that's one example. A lot of people have been, concerned about certain species of animals or plants because we are we have a gradual climate shift going. And as that climate shift goes, and that's happens always. Climate has shifted on Earth since the beginning. It's always changing. If it wasn't, we wouldn't have all those biogeographical features we talked about, right? With continental drift, we wouldn't have that evidence if it didn't always change. Earth is constantly changing. Nothing's static. It's always moving. So some species are going to be well suited to whatever changes occur and others are not. So exotic invasive species. What's that mean? What's that mean?
I watched a TED Talk about that.
Uh-huh.
So bunnies are invading everywhere because there are too many of them. All the other things are dying.
Do you know what continent has a real problem with bunnies?
Europe.
Europe and Australia. Do you know why Australia has a big problem with rabbits?
Big problem with everything.
So Australia, rabbits are not indigenous in Australia, meaning they don't belong there. They were brought in by Europeans. Europeans brought some rabbits, I think because they wanted to hunt them. You know, let's eat some Hassenpfeffer or whatever it is, you roasted rabbit, rabbit stew. So they released the rabbits. Yay, we'll hunt the rabbits for fun. There are no natural predators for rabbits, or not enough in that ecosystem, the way it evolved, to manage the rabbits. So now Australia in particular is full of what they call rabbit fences, which are these fences they dig way deep down in the ground because the rabbits just go under them. And they are overrun with rabbits. It's awful. Now, exotic species or invasive species are typically introduced, right? For something that are introduced. Sometimes it's people doing stuff like that. Last summer, we had a big deal with the, what was this called? Oh, shoot, it's a spider. I can't remember its name. No, it's like no. JrLRCL, yeah, JrLRCL spiders, Japanese, Asian spider. Whoop, Japan, Vietnam, that's where it's native. Came in with some food apparently, or maybe on some luggage or some cartons or whatever. You know, it hops on at the airport in Tokyo or whatever and hitches a ride on Delta and lands here. So we have them now, and they're like their bodies, not just their legs, but their bodies are about that big. They're huge, and with their legs are like that. And people are freaking out because they're everywhere. And we have some, actually, we may have one that I can actually show you today when we go outside to do lab, but they don't belong here. So sometimes that means they take over and eat the resources that the species who do belong here are supposed to be eating. So they outcompete them. And other times they cause problems because, you know, maybe they're poisonous or whatever. This guy, I want to show you this guy. This is from a news report over the summer here in Atlanta. He doesn't belong here, and somebody has released enough of them that now there's more than one and they're roaming around. So should just see that thing. He didn't belong. Yeah.
What is that?
You know what? I thought I wrote it down. I didn't write it down. I'll look it up and tell you. But it's big. It's big, and it's not supposed to be here. And it's been spotted.
Your dog.
It's been spotted in the area.
Those things can kill
You ever seen when the alligators end up in Lake Lanier on occasion? That's not supposed to happen either.
That is why I'm scared to swim in there.
There's a lot of people that don't like Lake Lanier for a variety of reasons. So,
It's haunted.
hey Drew, will you open Ozzy's door just so you can come out? Thank you.
People die in that place for days, and I'm terrified of catfish because I've seen enough River Monsters episodes to know what happens.
So,
I had so many of those spiders in my backyard.
Oh, yeah?
I didn't go out there for 3 months.
so he's not Drew. Just open the door. Let him be chill. Shh. So, anywho, yeah, you get stuff like occasionally there will be an alligator in Lake Lanier. They are not supposed to live there. We are too far west for them, but it's usually because somebody lets one go and they find the water because that's where they're supposed to be. There was one caught, I think summer before last. They had to call out some reptile wrangler and he caught the thing. So means of dispersal. Okay, so how do species? Yeah, they belong here though. So how do species spread? Wind. Can you think of a species that spreads by wind? Think about plants.
Bacteria?
Bacteria can, yeah. Drew?
What were those things called? Things you blow on?
Dandelions, yep. Take a little dandelion and blow it. You ever do that?
Yeah.
Do your parents like dandelions in the middle of their yard?
No.
Do they want to like strangle you if you blow one of those things and spread seeds all over the yard? So yeah, wind. And there are some, especially plants, trees, whatever, who they have evolved so that their seeds can be spread by wind. Maple, you ever seen these little guys? We used to call them helicopters. You throw them and they go like this, they spin. Right. Dandelions, milkweed. Milkweed, they make the really big ones. We called them fairies when I was a kid. They float around through the air, they're real big. And then you've got ones that are spread by water. And that's when you get stuff that gets in the water and just floats along. And sometimes it's bacteria, algae, sometimes it's seeds of some kind. And then you got animals. Now there's multiple ways that animals spread, especially plants. And obviously we can spread animals like we just said with that crazy lizard, right? But we can spread plants too. Sometimes we spread it by these types of plants that have little thorns and little burrs on them. You ever, like we have something that grows in my yard, I don't even know what species it is, but it's got little burrs, and the dogs walk through it and they're covered, right? The reason that is because that plant is trying to get its seeds elsewhere. Another way is if you ever
jumping cactus in
oh yeah, mm-hmm.
Arizona.
Mm-hmm. So if you eat something and poop it out somewhere else, that helps spread it too. Not only does that help spread it, but if you think about like the animals that will eat seeds, like I have raspberries that grow out here, and there are chipmunks that come up. I've watched them. They come running up and they stuff them in their face and they run away. Well, sooner or later that chipmunk is going to go poop out those raspberry seeds. And when it poops them out, not only does it spread the seeds, but it basically leaves them in a big glob of fertilizer. Like if you're a raspberry, you don't get better than that, man. That's how you grow somewhere else. That's how it works. What were you going to say, Darcy?
You should see some of the squirrels in my neighborhood. They just sit around all day stuffing their faces with nuts.
Yep. They're pretty crazy. We have, so like I have my little bird feeder out here, and I put that ear of corn because I saw that purplish corn in the store the other day and I thought it was weird. So I bought it to try it, and it was not good for corn on the cob. It was like really starchy and gross. But I thought, well, I'll leave it out there and see if the squirrels come. And if the squirrel comes, he'll be spreading that corn somewhere. And those birds, they sometimes they knock those seeds out of the bird feeder, and we have all kinds of weird things that grow down on the ground below it. That aren't like millet and whatever, sunflower seeds, bless you, that grow on the ground because those birds knock them out. We have in particular, you know what the state bird is? Do you know what our state bird is?
Brown thrasher.
Yeah, you ever seen a brown thrasher do what they do? You know why they're called thrashers? Because wherever they land, if they're looking for food, they throw everything in their way. They throw it, their beaks, their feet, they just toss stuff. They'll go through leaves and pine straw like that. But those suckers will land on my bird feeder and they will throw out everything they don't want. It's not like they're gonna pick through it. The cardinals will land and they'll pick through the millet and they'll pick out sunflower seeds because that's what they like. The thrashers will throw everything off that they don't like. So it's just the way they are. So competition, we're talking about competition. So competition is when organisms compete for limited resources, food, territory, mates. It can be between members of the same species, which we call specific, meaning intra, meaning inside of, or different species, which would be interspecific. So intra would mean like within, and inter would mean with things outside. So competition is what you call it. They call it a null or negative interaction because both parties are negatively affected. And so here's an example of an interspecific competition. When members of two different species are competing for the same resource, which in this case is food, and they're representing species by different colors because otherwise they look pretty much the same to me. And I think there's just different colors of, I don't know. It's an odd choice for the graphic. Yeah, one's darker red and
one looks smaller red.
So they're competing for this one resource. So if you think about it, you're competing for things like food, territory, and mates. All right, I have a bluebird box right out here, and it's hanging on the little hook over here. And I had 3 broods of eggs in there this summer. First one were some chickadees. Now the chickadees don't belong in there, but they got there first. So they won the territory. And they were just Carolina chickadees, and they had 4 or 5 babies, and they went on their way. Then my bluebirds that are supposed to live there came back. Now I don't know where they'd been prior to this. They came back, they laid a brood, hatched that brood, laid a second brood, same couple, hatched that brood. And the first set of babies kept coming back, like to check on the siblings and stuff. It was kind of cool to watch them. But those chickadees won that territory game because they got there first. And you can only have but so many mating pairs of bluebirds in an area because they need a territory. So their babies can't stay here and find a mate. They have to go somewhere else, and they need a certain amount of territory because the territory is going to contain their food, right? There's only but so much food available, and there's only but so much water available within a particular ecosystem. And then you get to mates. So especially when we get to talking about genetics and things like that, in most species, it's the females that do the choosing and the males that try desperately to get chosen, which is why if you look at, so when you think about peacocks are really the males, the peahens are the females. And nobody talks about peahens because they don't look like much. They're just little brown things. I mean, they're not very exciting, but you've seen a peacock, right? What's he look like? Like, do peacocks catch your eye, right?
And press the female.
Huge big tails. Oh, well, let me tell you one thing about peacocks.
I made it.
Peacocks are beautiful, but they make the worst noises. There's nothing attractive about the noises. I stayed at a resort one time years and years and years ago. My husband and I were on a vacation in Jamaica, and they had peacocks that roamed, just roamed, peacocks and peahens, and they roamed all over the resort. And they would start squawking at each other. And for a beautiful creature, they make a really strange sound. It sounds like somebody who's just learning to play like a brass instrument for the first time. And it's it's like this unattractive. How did you open your mouth and let that out? You know, very weird, right? Very weird. You're so pretty. I expect you to, no, it's terrible. Yeah, it's terrible. But
Humans do that too.
yes.
They don't do that. They don't go.
No, but the females are choosy. It's still in most
That's actually one of the
species.
reasons why men keep our voices.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting evolutionary things that have come along with that. Have you ever seen a peacock spider? So peacock spider, yeah, have you seen them?
Yeah. I think I've seen
So
that.
peacock spiders are fascinating, and this is crazy. We'll probably, maybe I'll find a video of them because I saw some like last week that I was watching that were just hilarious. But peacock spiders on their abdomen, the males have these little scales that cover their abdomen, and the scales are composed so that they refract light in different ways and produce like a spectrum, a full rainbow of colors. So basically, like they lift up their butts, for lack of a better word, they lift up their abdomens, and they have this flattened area that is just rainbow, like iridescent rainbow colored. And then they, no joke, they wave it around and they dance like this, and they go back and forth and they dance in front of the females. And if she doesn't like him, if she's looking at him like, I don't like your dance and you're not fancy enough, she kills him like that. So every time they show up, they're risking, right? They are risking. So they're competing with all the other males because what they want to do is pass their genes on, right? So they're sitting there showing off, showing off, showing off, showing off. Woo! And she's like, yeah, you're dead. If she does like him, thanks, coming over here. No. If she does like him, she'll mate with him and then she'll kill him. But so they're risking it no matter what. Yeah. So then you got weather and climate, right? Conditions of the atmosphere over a short time is weather, right? Changes within minutes, hours, weeks. What's your weather? And then you have conditions over long periods of time, and that's going to be climate, right? So that doesn't change quickly. That changes over thousands of years typically. So our weather today is pretty decent. Pretty typical Atlanta weather for late August.
Yesterday I checked my weather forecast and it said thunderstorms all day long.
Yeah, and that's Atlanta's interesting. It's like they can't even get close.
I know.
They don't even get, yeah, right? I don't get it. I mean, it's the only place I've ever lived where it was this far off every time. I've got pictures where like I held my iPad up where it says 0% chance of rain and it's pouring, and I take a picture with my phone like with the rain in the background.
And then you're just like this.
Hello.
Rain, and then sunshine, just like that.
Yeah. So let's talk about biomes and aquatic ecosystems for a little bit. All right. So we've got our biomes, right? Biome is going to be your large ecosystem area. So something to know, you may hear the term boreal forest. All right. And you may also hear the term taiga. Which one did your book use? I can't remember. I think you guys used boreal forest. I think the other one used boreal forest. Theirs used boreal forest too. I couldn't remember if one used taiga or not, but they're kind of interchangeable. You can use both terms. But the boreal forest tends to mean the southern part of the taiga. So taiga is kind of more northern part, but it's the same biome. So you may hear those terms used interchangeably. And if you're hearing them used in the same conversation, it's usually because somebody is trying to divide out and go the southern part and the northern part. So here are our biomes, our major biomes, terrestrial biomes. What's terrestrial mean? Do you know? That's a good one.
I think it has something to do with aliens. I'm thinking
That would be extraterrestrial, right? Extraterrestrial would be an alien. So This one right here, TER, some TERR, sometimes you see TERRA, like Terra. That would mean earth, literally earth. Like a potato, for example, in French, the word potato is pomme de terre, which literally translates as apple of the earth because it comes out of the ground, right? I mean, so that's what it means, earth. So terrestrial biomes are those on the ground, those that are not in the water. So what you have is your rainforest. And here's a map of where you're going to find rainforests. Do we have rainforests in the US? Look at that. Do we? We sure do. We've got different kinds. We've got the tropical kind of down south, but we also have up here in Seattle, Oregon, that whole area, Washington State. We've got, we have a different kind of rainforest up there. Those are like the up in, like, if you go up here, see up here, Oregon, Washington State. No, not really. Real close, right at the bottom, maybe. So your rainforest, you got two types, tropical and temperate. So these guys up here, these are what we call temperate rainforest. Tropical are down here. So your tropical are found close to the equator. They're nice and warm. Tropical rainforest is hot, it's moist, it rains all year long, all the time. And you've got 3 levels of those rainforests. And this is the canopy, the understory, and the forest floor. The canopy is at the tippy top, is where all the light is, right? That's where all the leaves are. They're spreading out over the top. And you've got your understory, which is the stuff in between. That's where you're going to find, like, think about your monkeys swinging around. They're in there, right? And then your forest floor usually doesn't get anywhere near as much light because the leaves are blocking it, but you're going to find a lot of interesting organisms down there. And then your temperate rainforests are found near your cooler coastal areas further north or south of the equator. So down here in South America, down at the bottom, and then up here in northern North America are going to be very similar in climate, right? And it's the same biome. So interesting fun facts for you here. The world's 10 largest rainforests. I don't think I put in 10. I think I put in 4. I think I ran out of room and gave up. So you got Amazon, which is what you guys have probably heard of. And you can see that on the map, right? Where's the Amazon? Right there. All right. Big thing. Amazon rainforest. So it's 5,500,000 kilometers square, and it's tropical. You've also got Congolese rainforest. That's this right here near Congo. All right. And that's like 1.8 square kilometers roughly. And that's also tropical. And then your New Guinea rainforest. That's kind of in this same area over here too. And that's going to be your, that's about 300,000 kilometers.
I did a writing assignment on carnivorous plants.
Ooh.
And it said in New Guinea, there's this giant one that has really sticky ribs, and it like breaks down its prey with acid enzymes.
Isn't that cool? That's so neat.
Oh.
So here's your taiga. Taiga is going to mostly be in the north. Okay, that's where you're going to find it. And it's going to be stuff like Canada and Russia and all that good business. So your taiga, also called your boreal forest, right, is where you're going to find your vegetation composed primarily of cone-bearing, needle-leaved, or scale-leaved evergreen trees. You're not going to find deciduous trees there, right? You're not going to find poplars and things like that like we have. It's all going to be things similar to pine trees. And yeah, there's some over there in China. Yep, that's near like the Mongolian area. So you're going to get, they're found in circumpolar, that would mean near the poles, right? Forested regions characterized long winters, high annual precipitation, so lots of rain. And taiga means land of little sticks in Russian. And it takes its name from a collective term of the northern forests of Russia and Siberia. So this area specifically is taiga. And in Russia, the world's largest taiga stretches 5,800 kilometers from the Pacific Ocean to the Ural Mountains. And the taiga region was completely glaciated or covered by glaciers during the last ice age. And the soil beneath it is what you call permafrost, which means it is permanently frozen. You're not digging in that soil. It is hard as a rock. Temperate and deciduous. Okay, so this is where we are. We live in a temperate deciduous rainforest. I mean, forest, sorry, not rainforest, temperate deciduous forest. So this is a place that has deciduous trees that drop leaves. Our trees drop leaves, right? Lots of leaves. They're all over the place. Not all of them. I mean, we have evergreen trees, but we have a lot of trees that drop leaves. So this is where you got cold winters, warm summers, 30 to 60 inches of rain a year, precipitation a year. Tallest, from the tallest to the shortest, you have what you call tree stratum zone, small tree, sapling, shrub, herb, brown. like that. And the largest temperate deciduous forest is in the eastern part of North America, which is right where we are. We live in what is the world's largest temperate deciduous forest. But most of it, if you look right here, Claire Darcy, if you look right here, most of it was deforested by 1850. So we are living in what should be, hey guys, keep it down for a few more minutes, please. Cole, hey, keep it down a little. Dad's working. By 1850, we had cut down most of the trees in this rainforest to make room for farms and whatever else. But this was all forest prior to that. Grasslands, we have them right here in the middle. And this is stuff like savannas, yep, temperate grasslands, steppe grasslands. And this is where you get low rainfall and you can have issues with wildfires, lots of grazing animals. Like think about where the bison in the US used to be, right here, right? This is where we had major bison before we hunted them all. So grasslands are generally located between deserts and forests. Major temperate grasslands, US, Uruguay, Argentina, and then your savanna, your largest one is in Africa. And they didn't put it in here, but it's like pretty much most of that continent. Desert, what's the desert? So the desert doesn't have to be hot. It usually is, but not always. So when you think about desert, you probably think hot. It's really more about being arid, about having less precipitation. I'll get you in a minute. I'm watching the clock because we got about 2 minutes. So your deserts cover about 1/5 of the earth, actually. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. And they're arid. They're arid deserts, which are hot and dry. They're semi-arid ones, which are not as hot and dry, but they still have long summers, cool winters. Coastal deserts. These occur around western edges of continents at the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. So we're talking these right here and right here. Yep, and right here. And then you have cold deserts. These guys have low temperatures, long winters, and this is Antarctica. Antarctica is a desert. It is a cold desert.
Yes.
And then you've got your key characteristics there. Little bits of rainfall. I'll get you in a minute as soon as we wrap up because we're almost done. So our 5 largest deserts are Antarctica being the first one, and then the Arctic, Sahara, the Arabian Desert, and the Gobi. And then lastly, our tundra. What's our tundra? Our tundra is cold, right? Biome is frozen. Totally. It's just frozen. Right? It has a short growing season followed by harsh conditions that the plants and animals in the region need special adaptations to survive. Long, dark, cold winters, temperature below 0 degrees Celsius for 10 months of the year. That's almost all year. It's below freezing, right? And this is where everything is permafrost. All the soil is frozen all the time. So you got your Arctic tundra and your alpine tundra. Alpine tundra is this little weird bit right in the middle here. And then your Arctic and Antarctic are these obviously top and bottom, Arctic especially. And then these are some places where you're going to find it. Alaska, Canada, Russia. So some of these you may have noticed they overlap a little bit, and they do. So we're going to real quick buzz through these aquatic ones because it's almost time for a lab. So we have aquatic biomes, the main ones, freshwater, marine, and estuary. Freshwater is like the Chattahoochee River behind my house. Marine is ocean, so it's salt water. Estuaries are where they come together. And what we call the water in estuaries is brackish, which means it's a mixture of salt water and fresh water. And it's where the ocean water is flowing into the continental freshwater and the continental freshwater is flowing out into the ocean, and there's a mixture. And a lot of the times if you've been or visited an estuary, it's a lot of like marsh grass, that kind of thing. You see little crabs and things all in there. There's a lot of fishing in estuaries. So in your estuaries, you have, they're normally along coasts, obviously. And that's where the freshwater and the saltwater come together. Each day as the tide rises, saltwater flows into the estuary, and likewise, fresh water flows down from the rivers and creeks, mixes with the saltwater, and it can be surrounded by swamps, coral reefs, and beaches. There's great estuaries you can see along the Georgia coast near Jekyll Island and all that kind of stuff. All kinds of wonderful estuaries to visit. Freshwater, and you can see where they are here all over the map. They're located in this kind of purple. If you look right there, you can see the Mississippi right there in the middle. So this is where you have less than 1% salt concentration. So fresh water that comes from runoff primarily or groundwater. And this includes lakes, rivers, ponds, streams, and wetlands, about 1/5 of the world. Now, Lake Lanier is a big freshwater lake, but it was a river, right? Lake Lanier is not a natural lake, it's a man-made lake. If you were to get in a canoe or hopefully a motorboat, because you'd be going upstream, and went upstream from my backyard, you would run into the dam that we built to create Lake Lanier. because it's hydroelectric. It's power. It's used for power creation, which is why we built that dam. And prior to that, it was all a river. And interestingly, if you drive around up there or even really look at a map, you will see roads in Gwinnett County that stop at the lake and continue on the opposite side. The name continues in all kinds of places where there is now lake, where there didn't used to be lake, used to just be ground. We flooded farms, cities, all kinds of things. We moved cemetery. We're supposed to have moved all the bodies. Some people contest that, but yes. And then you get marine.
Yeah.
All right, that's where you got your saltwater biome. This is the largest
Here is kind of hot.
biome. Yeah, this is the largest biome in the world. Okay, obviously because it takes up most of the world, right? So your oceans have such diverse life in them that you're probably not even aware of because it's not something you see because it's not where you live, right? You can't just go take a walk. I mean, you could go visit a tundra if you really felt like it. It's gonna be really hard to go visit, you know, the vents at the bottom of the sea. Yes, it doesn't work that way, right? So deciduous forests, this was in your notes. Warm summers, cold winters, primarily climate conditions, temperature, precipitation determine that plants grow in a region, right? Deciduous forests have a variety of habitats. This is just from your notes if you want to look over what was there. Point along a shoreline between high and low tide is called an intertidal zone. And the organisms that live there, you ever seen barnacles? Or even oysters that cling to the sides of piers as they get beaten by waves and they're hanging on. They have to be able to live through those types of changes in water level and the pounding of the waves. So they're specially evolved for that purpose. And then you've got your different layers of the water and you got your neritic zone, and that's where you got your photosynthesis happening in the top layers of your water. And obviously, if you're at the very, very bottom, you're going to have more trouble with that. So studying populations real quick, because we're running over. So some methods of determining population are direct, indirect observations, sampling, mark, and recapture. So you can go and count, that's direct observation. How many crabs live in this tidal pool? I will count the crabs. 5, ta-da, direct observation. You've also got what you're going to call indirect observation. So these are swallows that in particular build these nests stuck to a cliff. They build their nests out of mud, they stick them here on the side of the cliff, and you can count by knowing how many offspring each swallow typically has, and then counting how many nests they've made, you can estimate how many offspring there are. Like if you predict 4 babies per nest, you can guess how many babies will be born.
Looks like the whole cliff is just going.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Sampling, this is, you can't count everything. That's a lot of birch trees. You'd be there for a year and a half. So you're going to take an area, like I'm going to take a 50 square meter area and count the birch trees. And then I'm going to multiply whatever number I find by how many meters of land I have, because counting all of those birch trees would take me my lifetime. And then lastly, you get this deal, which is your mark and recapture. So see this right here? This one doesn't even need recapturing. That right there is a radio transmitter. And it's stuck to this sea turtle shell. Wrong entirely. Sea turtle shell. And now we know where he is at all times because we can follow him with a radio transmitter. They're also the kind that they catch them later and count. Now, lastly, you had this little question. You have a 12 meter by 7 meter vegetable garden. In 1 square meter, you find 2 toads. All right, you find your 2 toads here. So estimate your total population. So what you would do, obviously, is you would multiply. And all your little toads will come in and this is basically how you're doing sampling, right? Same thing with the birch trees. You're going to decide how many you possibly would have based on how many you have in a smaller area multiplied by the larger.
I like that animation.
Thank you. I spent a long time on that animation. It's fun. Yep.
There's a lot of purple toads.
So 168 toads is what you would have found. And population can increase when birth rates rise or others immigrate in, and it can decrease when they die or move out. Lastly, changes in population size when new members join, and then birth rates and death rates. If your birth rate increases or your birth rate decreases, your death rate increases or decreases, that's going to impact your population. And then population statement basically says what we just said. If your birth rate goes up and your death rate goes down, your population is going to increase quickly. If your birth rate goes down and your death rate goes up, you're going to lose people really fast, or organisms really fast. Remember this one with emigration and immigration. Okay, immigration means you're coming in. Emigration, if you think of the word exodus, you're going out. So population density is your number of individuals in a given area. And then we talked about limiting factors, right? Competition, food, water, space. And carrying capacity is how much one area can support. Squirrel was too cute. I think those are the other group's answers stuck in your thing. Interactions among living things, real quick. Wait, this is mostly for the other group, but yeah. Organisms are going to be specifically adapted. If you are this little stubby short-necked giraffe, you can't eat, you're going to die.
Oh my god.
That's the way it is. If you are the tall neck giraffe, you're going to eat, you're going to live. 3 major types of interactions in an ecosystem. Competition, we talked about. Predation, one kills another. And then symbiosis, live together. There are multiple versions of symbiosis. Predators and prey are evolved differently. Your predators can see all in front of them because they are looking ahead to hunt. Your prey, however, if you look at where prey's eyes are positioned, on the side of their head, so they can see what's coming from behind. Consider a rabbit. And consider like where a dog's eyes are positioned, or your eyes are on the front of your head. Where are a rabbit's eyes? Over here, right? That's why. And then different types of symbiosis. You've got mutualism, everybody benefits. Commensalism, one benefits and the other isn't affected. And then parasitism, where one's going to benefit and one is harmed. And then we're going to run out of time. So I'll post it. There's not much left. I think there's this one last slide. Yeah, that's it. This is the last slide. So it talks about succession. If you're driving down the road and you see a field of tiny little pine trees, that's primary succession. Something just went through there and knocked them all down, and now it's growing back. All right, Drew, do you want to ask the other group to come on in here real quick? Because we're gonna real quick go over some instructions before we start. Don't say that. Just go get them. Weirdo. Yo, idiot. All right. Where are we going at? No, we're gonna go over it real quick and make sure everybody has. Yeah, really quickly we are. And then we're gonna start. This week's lab is in 2 pieces. There's an outside portion and then come back and do an inside portion.
Yeah, there's like 6 pages.
Yeah. I'm throwing jelly beans. My dog will find it.
Big stack of lab.
Yep. You guys ready? Come on in. Coach, I mean, kick your butt yesterday? Yeah. He's good at that.
My cat kicked my butt yesterday.
Your cat?
Yes.
That's funny.
Picked him up way too many times.
All right, y'all come in real quick. Faster the better. Y'all should have, I was late, so you should be ready. Hello, everything. All right, so I'm gonna go over the data I collected for you guys for your lab over the last couple days. You're gonna wanna make sure this is written down in your lab. These are the pictures we got, right? You guys have probably seen these if you were following along like you should be, looking for what's next. But the ones I really want to show you are these day 1, day 5s I got at the very end here. And then we'll go over. So some groups had kind of more obvious results than others. And your actual test tubes are right here if you want to look at them. So if we look at Team Palm Tree, if we look at your day 1 data, so you kind of had this going on where you didn't have much going on. But if you look at the non-agitated sample, y'all had a very, very clear difference between your fertilizer and your control. And it's behind you over there. Very, very clear. Some weren't as clear as others. This one was very clear. Now you guys here, you want it swirled every time, but you can see him sitting over there unswirled, and still even swirled here, agitated, you can still see much greener in your fertilizer one than in your control. Okay, for this guy, these guys, it wasn't as direct for Team W. So for Team W, you could see growth in both. of them, and it wasn't quite as obvious as others. Now, I hypothesize this has to do with where the algae landed rather than how much algae there is. I think if you were to count the number of individuals or put it in a centrifuge and spin it down, you would probably see results that appear more similar to everyone else's. But looking at it this way, what you kind of got was green and green. I just think it's about how high up on the sides it grew more than anything else. Was that all of them? Or I missed one.
You missed us.
Where are you? Ah, there you go. Awkward armadillos was pretty clear too. You could see definitely more in the experimental versus the control. And the actual ones are right there. I taped them to the background. So they were taped to the white, so you don't even have to move them. You can really clearly see it. I moved all the orange stuff out of the way. So to go over what you should have for answers, let's see. So if you're summarizing your observations over 4 days, what you're probably going to say is something along the lines of you notice growth in both, but for most of you, you probably noticed more growth with fertilizer than without, right? I think that was true for everybody. And then how did the addition of fertilizer affect the growth of algae? You guys good? For most of you guys, it clearly increased your growth, your algae growth. So think about it. If you have a farm and you're throwing fertilizer on everything and that runoff goes into a lake or a pond, you might be causing issues with algae growth in the pond, which is kind of where you need to be thinking along those lines, because this is an ecology lab. So why did you use cotton balls instead of rubber stoppers? Who had an answer for that? Drew, what you got?
If you use rubber, which prevent oxygen from getting in.
Not oxygen from getting in. What do we need in? Did you know? Carbon dioxide in, oxygen out. Yes. Also keeping particulate out. We don't want to add, yes, the exchange. And we don't want dust and stuff to get in there and maybe settle to the bottom and mess up our sample. We can't tell what's dust and what's algae, right? We don't want that going on. So for sure, we wanted to kind of block particulate, filter that out, and we wanted to allow for a free exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide back and forth, back and forth. And then, so who has an answer for this one? How would a thick layer of algae on the surface of a pond affect the producers that live on or near the bottom? Who got that? Somebody has. Darcy, what'd you say?
I think it's probably because the producers on the bottom eat the nasty stuff on the bottom, and then larger fish on top eat the algae from the bottom. No, I just got confused.
No, that's fine. Does anybody have an answer for what could happen to the producers? What do you have, Jack?
Like no light producers. So like
There we go.
Producers need light, right? At least this kind of producer. We're talking about photosynthetic producers, right? So there are going to be some that live near or closer to the bottom. They may not live totally on the bottom, but closer to, especially if it's shallow. Like if you had the time on the way out of here and you stopped by the pond at the front of the neighborhood, walked behind the tennis courts and the playground and looked at it, you'll see there are some shallow areas, right? And there are producers underneath that you can see. They're growing on the bottom, but they're clearly photosynthetic. They're green. And if you get algae in there and it covers that top layer, it's going to block that sunlight. So you're going to mess with your population of producers underneath. And then everything, like Darcy was saying, everything that feeds on them is now going to have an issue. So this is something that needs to be considered if you're gardening or farming and you're using algae and you're in an area where your fertilizer may run off into, especially a pond that's not got running water, not like a lake or a stream or whatever, you can cause some real issues. So I think I told y'all last week that my grandparents had this pond that was constantly covered in algae. To this day, I've wondered who was fertilizing their yard so nearby that everything, I mean, they did, but I don't think they did that much. Whoever did it, it caused a lot of issues. And it was near, that pond was actually near estuary. It was brackish, but mostly freshwater because we lived in Virginia Beach. So there are all these little estuaries that cut in. And that one kind of came under a road and everything. So it could have been anybody nearby, truthfully. So let's look today what we're doing. So be sure you have those answers. This lab stays in your binder. Keep it in your binder. Today's lab gets turned in. Okay, so be sure whatever you're writing on it is clear. Put your name on your lab. Say it like 100 times. Put your name on your paper. Homeschoolers, homeschoolers, homeschoolers. Put your name on your paper. It's like the world's biggest homeschool problem. You don't need to do it at home. Your mother knows who you are. All right, so today we're gonna do outdoor lab first. And it's not very long. We're gonna be out there for a little bit and then we're gonna come back in. So what we're doing is we are gonna go outside. We're gonna look at an area that I have roped off that's roughly 25 square meters. You've got little picnic blankets over here. All right, now I ask that when you take your blanket out, you pay attention to how you unfolded it. Because it would be super if you can fold it back that way, but only if it's not wet and not full of leaves. If it's wet, when you come back, just hang it over the deck railing. It'll get a chance to dry, like wet side up, you know, use that noggin and let it dry for me. That'd be super. But if you can fold it back up the way it came, that's best. All right, you got Darcy, Claire, Ethan, Cole, everybody paying attention? All right, so when you go out today, you're gonna be paying close attention to what's going on in this 25 square meter space. You're going to be asking yourself, what are consumers and what are the 4 classifications of consumers? Oh, Michael, this is Colson. He's in your group. Okay, Colson's your new team member. All right, so you're going to be doing that. You're going to be paying attention to your types of consumers and seeing what you can find. And you're going to look for the source of all food in the ecosystem and what is generally used to make this food, which you guys can probably figure out on your own. So I've marked this off. When you go out, you're gonna take with you your blanket and you're gonna plop your lab team down on it. There are 4 sides of this square and there are 4 lab teams. So you gotta get to pick where you are, right? You're gonna wanna take with you a pencil and one of those little notebooks over there. There are little tiny lab notebooks. Those are yours once you take, wait till I'm done. Once you take it, you can keep it, but you're going to keep notes in it today. There's also a piece of cardstock paper over there that you can use because you're going to be asked to draw a map of your area, and you probably want a little more paper than what's right stuck there in your little notebook. So as a group, we're going to do this as lab teams. You're going to discuss the different types of ecosystems found around your home. This is here. And you're going to determine which one you're going to examine. I did that for you. Too bad. So you're going to use colored pencils. And here's where you guys as a lab team need to agree. You're going to use colored pencils to represent the different types of organisms you expect to find within your ecosystem. So you're going to make a key to represent those organisms. And you're going to make a little data table. I mean, you're going to fill that in the data table in your lab. What organisms do you expect to see? So what are some things you expect to see out there? What now? Trees, grass, what else?
Squirrels.
Birds, squirrels. Okay. So our little ecosystem we're going to be looking at is outside the gate and it's within the forest. Okay. I will tell you, I'm going to give you one big clue before you get out there. You're going to want to look down, obviously, because you're going to be staring. No, there were no yellow jackets where I was sure about that. But you're going to be looking at the ground, but you're also going to want to look up. I know for a fact there are some things about eye level that you're going to want to take note of. And this includes when you're walking around the outside. And these are things with 8 legs. And these are things with 8 legs that have spun some very big food catching networks right around the outside of where you'll be. So if you are staring only at the ground and not looking up, you will walk right into their very beautifully constructed food catching networks. And you probably don't want to. So look up and look down. So you're going to draw your map on that white cardstock, right? And you're going to draw colored circles. Cole. Colored circles on the map to represent different organisms you find. Some of your circles are going to overlap. So you'd be like, oh, there's an ant here and an ant there. However you want to go about doing it, it's within your group. You're going to be 30 minutes out there. So I'm going to give you about 10 minutes to 5 minutes probably to situate inside. I'll release you all for 30 minutes. I'm going to give you a timer. I'm going to come back out and check on you. At the end of 30 minutes, you're going to come back in. You can get some water. And you'll consolidate this a little bit, and then you'll move on to the second half of this lab, which is the pencil paper part, okay? So you're gonna pay attention for 30 minutes and write down everything. So these are the colors you're using. These are the organisms you find, colors and organisms. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. 8 organisms that you're gonna wanna come up with that you think you're gonna find out there. And I've already given you a hint as to what one of them will be. And so work on this while you're out there. Like while you're there sitting on your mat, with your lab team, work through your answers, work through your chart, work through your drawing. When you turn your lab in, attach that map, staple it to it, okay? So that I have it. I'm gonna wanna see your map. And then you're going to draw 2 food chains that you saw and answer these questions about abiotic factors and predict how those could change during different seasons. All right. Then when you come back in, just so you know, we're going to do the second part of this lab, which is unrelated, completely different, pencil paper. This one is where you're going to read and take some data regarding whooping cranes and population and how that changes based on weather. So all you need for this is a ruler, calculator, and a pencil. All that's available up there. I mean, I'm going to grab some extra rulers and put them there for you. And so calculators, there's one for each team. So you're going to read through this. And this may be where team leaders, especially if you're high school and most of your team is not, you may need to work them through some of this data collection. So this may be what you want to focus on if you don't finish some of the easier questions in the first lab as a group. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys about 5 minutes as teams to get yourselves set up on paper, what it is you think you're going to look for, collect, make sure you guys, make sure you have your colored pencils. Everybody should have them because they came in your little orange zippy thing in your binder. Make sure you have a notebook to take notes and you have your white paper for your map. Okay, so I'm gonna set a 5-minute timer and then y'all are gonna head out. Alexa, set timer for 5 minutes. Yes, ma'am. Yes, one paper for each because you guys are all going to be, everybody can't be, have their eyes everywhere at the same time. So everyone's turning in a lab.
So, do we have a note? Are we using notebooks right now?
You're going to need your lab. You're going to need one of those tiny notebooks up there.
Are these things?
No, look at the little notebooks. There's also magnifying glasses. I want these. Yeah. Pencils. Anybody need extra colored pencils? No. One notebook person. Nature notebook. I'm gonna go grab some extra colored pencils for you.
I will probably say
Hey, what colors are gonna be with them?
okay, no, let's grab it. Okay. You need 2 more.
Okay, I'll go down.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, first, what animal, what organisms are we looking for? And we expect that.
So I know maybe spiders.
Okay.
Spiders, what color should spiders?
No, let's go write this down.
Let's say spiders are brown.
Close your eyes.
Yeah, we need a small set of colors.
Actually, spiders. Red. No, it's spiders are red. Like yellow,
Okay, but we can say they're. I think yellow.
Wait, let's go write this down.
I don't have it. Okay, we'll be here.
I lost my yellow one. Okay, so what yellow one? What yellow one?
Y'all keep the volume down a little bit. I know Jason is locked on call right now. So let's not totally. Michael, have you got Colson? He's with you.
Yes.
Okay. Right here. Everybody gets some of this.
I'm gonna find one.
Trees. I say trees are brown.
Lily.
Lily, right on you.
You need a tree to small notebook?
We can put everything.
There's one notebook for grass.
Yeah, we're great for guys. We'll do trees. Just because everyone.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Okay, so this is gonna be birds. I put yellow down as spider. Okay.
Yellow and black. Yellow and black. Just yellow. So brown.
Brown.
Oh, that girl.
I'm not gonna say.
Yeah.
This is hilarious. I thought you said that was hilarious. Yeah. Yes, which green, light green and dark green.
Blue for birds or whatever. You will guarantee.
All right, and because I don't hate you people, I'm going to put bug spray upside on the table if you want it. And I'm going to put mosquito sticks around where you're sitting. I know they're part of the ecosystem, but I don't like them. So I'm gonna put that out there for y'all, okay? So be sure you have magnifying glass, color pencil,
Baseball practice.
paper, notebook.
Let's do
I
flowers.
have like this giant ornament. My leg was
So be
literally.
sure everybody on your team is upstairs. Magnifying glass, color
Yeah, I was
pencil,
talking to someone.
white paper, that white piece of paper.
So I had baseball practice for 12 hours. And it was hot. One leg. So my legs are like this size. My legs were like that.
Face some flowers.
Okay.
I'll pay for one.
Yeah. There are 4 more.
Alexa, how much time is left on the timer?
I got done twice in a few weeks.
Alexa, volume 9.
Do you have a magnifying glass and a photo book?
Alexa, cancel timer. All right, so gang, head on out. Everyone needs blanket, magnifying glass, color pencil, tiny notebook, lab, white map paper. All right?
Does everybody need a piece of white map paper?
Yep.
Calculator, you don't need to.
Somebody grab me, clicker, please, on my, over there. Bailey, you got a check.
Yeah.
We already wrote flowers down.
First,
I
we
just
should
do
check out birds and monkeys.
We could just do like any color.
We could use red for cardinals or blue for bluebirds. But if you use red, then you can't use red for flowers.
It's not your own word. Red, cardinals and red, right?
Yes,
Okay.
And we got one more, and that would be
bluebirds.
What are we doing for this?
Cardinals up
Thank
there. Oh, purple was flowers.
I know, I messed up. I thought this was purple.
Alright,
And
no,
then
I felt this one was purple. Alright, everyone grab your names and notebooks.
And then blue for what?
Purple, purple is
bluebirds.
for, no, purple is for flowers. Purple is for,
Jacket.
it doesn't
I'm
matter.
sorry. Okay.
Purple is flowers.
Sorry, that's you.
Write down that. This
We
is-
all need it. Probably.
we all need that? Okay then.
Look like it's something like Adam Sandler would wear, like guy in shorts.
I don't know who that is. Actually, no,
Adam Sandler is.
no, I probably do, like, show me, and then tell me, like, oh, yeah,
Have you ever watched Grown Up?
that guy. Grown Ups? Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I've heard of them, and if you show me, and have you watched Grown Up?
So then as I'm just gonna go to the bathroom. I'll save you there. Not together, but. Okay. Oh no. She's not gonna hurry. She is? Yes. Not pathetic, but she's up. He just was hurry. That's my card stock. But don't we need that map paper? No. Boy.
Here.
it's locked. You have an excuse.
Yeah, I need it in that.
I wouldn't be able to fit through it.
I will. I know that. You're smaller than me. Anyways,
I
okay.
want my shoulders are too wide.
Okay, y'all, let's see here.
Yep.
What
Looking
happens
thing.
if producers and consumers at your site were
What happens if there are no decomposers? The dead stuff and all the dead matter will just continue to pile up.
yes, so all dead.
Okay, you guys work on this. I'll work on the whooping grain.
No, two all together. Hi, Elsie. Hi, Elsie.
Comes the rest of them. Wait for
Okay, I have so much stuff.
Oh. The friend, my mom's Kindle, and my book club book that I have to finish is tonight, and it's gonna take about 3 more hours. And with 3 more hours of the book, I'll be back tonight. No.
When you get home, I get home without.
Yeah, I took.
Awesome. Take care. Stay.
I may or may not have arrived. I had an order. It is.
Did you?
Yes, I have to finish all these entire pages and then choose them all in tomorrow. That's tomorrow.
So it should be relative.
Yeah.
That was
Yesterday. Yeah, I said yesterday. My mom's birthday was like a day.
That's the next slide.
Just to the left, or just, that's the pencil and paper one that we're doing right now.
We're working on the first one real quick.
What's the answer? What's the answer?
One moment.
Michael, might still be outside.
Oh, okay. Those are yours to
I
keep.
had it,
If you want to keep them, you can keep them. You can make it your own
on the
little,
second page.
nature journal. You take a walk and you write down what you find. Ozzy. When I kid, you had her monkey up. Good boy. That's it.
Yeah, my mom actually has.
I know, she's already taking it.
Surgery a couple of weeks ago. So she's having
She's having
a
it.
birthday and she's doing us up.
Okay, it's good. Jeff. I'll get this stuff to you on the form. I'll get you the first line on the form. You and I can work on the map.
Everybody loves us.
Uploaded Friday.
Where's the rest of your team?
Oh, you know what we should have done?
Where's the rest of Michael's team? Michael's team. Are they all still?
Okay.
Oh, they're coming in.
Do you know how to
Here they
do
come.
before?
I think they were folding the blanket or whatever.
I was like, what happened to my team?
Ah, okay. Colson needs to go wherever you're going.
Get to that. I'll post my information.
You're on the camera. Thanks.
I won't post pictures of stuff. I'll edit it.
All right, let's see.
And then put it up on the forum.
I got most of them. I had 0. Lucky you. I'm turning in.
So you guys have about an hour in which to
And then-
complete. No, wait, an hour? No.
Got about 4 minutes.
4 minutes. I'm lying. I looked at the wrong clock. To work on what you're working on. This is what your forums are good for, right? So you're going to want to take your forums, use them to share your information, Next week. Yep. I'll be sure it's in the email and it's really clear next week. Yep.
I did my binder work in my binder.
Okay.
But I supposed to do it online.
Okay. Except your homework. Did you turn in your homework yet? Your homework's online. So that one I didn't see this morning. So I reassigned it. When you go in and look at what's been reassigned and get those done. And you'll be good.
So is it lesson 2 or lesson 3?
It's a lesson. You had a. Did you do that first quiz?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, you did it for the first test. Okay. I think you just owe them the lesson 2 homework right now. At least this morning, from memory. Yeah. Yeah. Go and look online and see what's there.
Yeah, that's my dream.
Guys, guess what I'm gonna do?
Oh wow, has this been going the whole time? That's stupid. I'm gonna have to edit that one.